3 years ago, my sister Bethany destroyed my life by stealing my fiancé Marcus right before our wedding. The family chose sides, and I became the outcast. Tonight, walking into my parents' house for the first mandatory family dinner since the betrayal, I watch Bethany's face drain of color as my husband enters behind me. She recognizes him instantly. The champagne glass slips from her trembling fingers, shattering on the marble floor. My parents stare in confusion, but I smile knowingly. Some secrets have a way of surfacing at the most perfect moments. But before we dive into this twisted tale of family betrayal and ultimate justice, I want to know where you are watching from tonight. Are you Team Justice or Team Forgiveness? Hit that like button if you believe karma always finds its way back. And do not forget to subscribe, because this story has more shocking twists than a soap opera. Trust me, you will want to stick around to see how this family dinner from hell unfolds. My name is Scarlett Winters, and until 3 years ago, I believed family meant everything. I was the golden child, the successful marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, engaged to Marcus Hartwell, a charming investment banker who seemed to worship the ground I walked upon. My younger sister Bethany had always lived in my shadow, struggling through community college while I earned my MBA, bouncing between retail jobs while I climbed the corporate ladder. The first red flag appeared 6 months before my wedding. I noticed Marcus texting more frequently, claiming work emergencies that required late meetings. Bethany, who had been helping with wedding preparations, suddenly became distant and avoided family gatherings. When I questioned her absence, she claimed she was seeing someone new, but wanted to keep the relationship private. The discovery came on a Tuesday morning in March. I had forgotten my laptop at home and returned unexpectedly to find Marcus's car in my driveway. Inside my own house, I discovered them in my bed, wearing nothing but guilty expressions and my Egyptian cotton sheets. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could have. Marcus stammered pathetic excuses about finding true love, while Bethany cried crocodile tears about never meaning for it to happen. The family meeting that followed became a battlefield. My parents, Robert and Linda Winters, sat at their dining room table looking like judges presiding over a custody hearing. Bethany painted herself as the victim of unexpected love, claiming she had tried to resist but could not fight destiny. Marcus nodded along like a trained puppet, speaking about soulmates and second chances. My parents shocked me with their response. Instead of outrage at Bethany's betrayal, they expressed concern about family unity. My mother actually said the words that still burn in my memory today. "Scarlett, honey, maybe this happened for a reason. Bethany has never had your advantages, and if Marcus chose her, perhaps you should consider that love cannot be forced." The financial manipulation began immediately. My parents had promised to pay for my wedding, a lavish affair planned for their country club with 200 guests. When I canceled everything, they refused to reimburse me for the deposits I had personally made, claiming I was being dramatic and selfish. Instead, they quietly transferred the same amount to Bethany's account, calling it an early inheritance to help her start fresh with Marcus. 3 months later, Bethany and Marcus announced their engagement. The family celebrated with champagne and congratulations, while I remained frozen out of group chats and holiday plans. My own parents suggested I should attend the engagement party to show maturity and family solidarity. When I refused, they accused me of holding grudges and making everything about myself. The workplace humiliation followed shortly after. Marcus had connections throughout the financial district, and suddenly, my networking events became minefields. Former colleagues whispered behind my back about the woman who could not keep her man satisfied. My professional reputation suffered as gossip spread through industry circles like wildfire. The final straw came during my annual performance review. My supervisor, Janet Morrison, pulled me aside with fake concern etched across her face. She had heard about my personal troubles and wondered if I might benefit from taking extended leave to work through my emotional issues. The suggestion felt like a demotion disguised as compassion. That night, alone in my apartment with a bottle of wine and a mountain of self-doubt, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the victim of their narrative. I opened my laptop and began documenting every suspicious financial transaction I could remember from the months leading up to the betrayal. Marcus had access to my accounts during our engagement. He knew my passwords, my social security number, and had copies of my financial statements for our joint mortgage application. I started checking credit reports and bank statements with the intensity of a forensic accountant. The first discovery made my blood boil. 3 unauthorized credit card applications had been submitted, using my information all approved due to my excellent credit score. The cards showed charges for expensive dinners, jewelry, and weekend getaways during the exact period Marcus claimed to be working late. He had been financing his affair with Bethany using my credit. The second discovery was even more damaging. My retirement account, which I had been building for 8 years, showed a suspicious withdrawal of $15,000 just 2 weeks before our breakup. The signature looked close enough to mine that the bank had processed it without question, but I knew I had never authorized any withdrawal. The paper trail led to a joint investment account that Marcus had convinced me to open, claiming it would help us save for our future home. He had positioned himself as the primary account holder, giving him legal authority to make withdrawals. The money from my retirement account had been transferred into this joint account, then immediately moved to an account belonging to Bethany. My family's reaction to these discoveries revealed the depth of their betrayal. When I presented the evidence to my parents expecting outrage and demands for justice, they instead suggested I was being vindictive and trying to destroy Bethany's happiness. My father actually accused me of fabricating evidence to frame Marcus for crimes he never committed. The conversation that ended my relationship with my family forever took place in their living room on a Sunday afternoon in October. Bethany sat curled up in Marcus's lap, while my parents flanked them like protective shields. I laid out bank statements, credit reports, and transaction records across their coffee table like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Bethany looked at the documents with wide, innocent eyes and claimed she had no idea Marcus had taken money from my accounts. She suggested that maybe I had given him permission and forgotten, due to the stress of the breakup. Marcus remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the accusations, while my parents nodded along with Bethany's explanation. The moment that broke me completely came when my mother said, "Scarlett, even if Marcus made some financial mistakes, Bethany should not be punished for his past actions. They are building a life together now, and dragging up old problems will only hurt everyone involved." I realized then that my family had chosen their side, and it was not mine. They were willing to sacrifice my financial security and emotional well-being to protect Bethany's fantasy romance built on theft and lies. I gathered my documents, walked out of their house, and did not speak to any of them for 3 years. The months following my exile from the family became a masterclass in strategic patience and methodical investigation. While Bethany and Marcus played house with stolen money, I channeled my rage into something far more productive than tears or public confrontations. I hired Rebecca Martinez, a private investigator specializing in financial crimes, and began building a case that would eventually destroy everything they had built on lies. Rebecca's first revelation came within 2 weeks of our initial meeting. Marcus Hartwell was not the successful investment banker he pretended to be. His firm had actually terminated his employment 6 months before our engagement ended following an internal investigation into suspicious trading practices. He had been living off credit cards and my stolen money while maintaining the facade of professional success. The deeper we dug, the more disturbing the truth became. Marcus had a pattern of financial manipulation that stretched back years before he met me. Rebecca uncovered 3 previous relationships where he had gained access to women's accounts and systematically drained their savings. One victim, a nurse named Patricia Collins, had lost her entire retirement fund to his schemes, but never pressed charges due to embarrassment and family pressure. Armed with this information, I reached out to Patricia and 2 other victims. Our clandestine meetings felt like sessions of group therapy, mixed with strategic war planning. Each woman shared similar stories of charm manipulation and financial devastation. We discovered that Marcus used identical tactics, with all of us gaining access to accounts through false emergencies, creating joint investments that he controlled, and timing his thefts to coincide with major life changes that would mask his activities. The most shocking discovery came when Rebecca tracked down Marcus's financial records through his former employer's internal investigation files. He had been embezzling client funds for over 2 years, using sophisticated schemes that involved creating false investment portfolios and phantom transactions. The firm had quietly terminated him to avoid scandal, but the evidence of his crimes was meticulously documented in their security files. While I built my case against Marcus, I also began investigating my family's involvement in covering up the truth. My parents had never been naive about financial matters. My father spent 30 years as a certified public accountant, and my mother managed the finances for a medical practice. They would have recognized the signs of identity theft and embezzlement if they had cared enough to look. I hired a second private investigator to monitor my family's activities and communications. The surveillance revealed that my parents knew far more about Marcus's criminal behavior than they had admitted. Phone recordings captured conversations where my mother discussed Marcus's employment termination with Bethany, and my father acknowledged concerns about the suspicious financial transactions, but decided they were not his problem to solve. The surveillance also uncovered Bethany's active participation in the financial crimes. She had not been an innocent victim swept away by love, as she claimed. She had been Marcus's willing accomplice from the beginning. Bank records showed she had helped him forge my signatures on several documents and had personally deposited stolen funds into accounts she controlled. Rebecca's investigation revealed that Bethany had used my stolen money to pay off her student loans, buy a new car, and cover the security deposit on the luxury apartment she shared with Marcus. She had essentially purchased her new lifestyle with my future, then played the victim when confronted with the consequences of their joint crimes. The most damaging evidence came from Marcus's personal communications, which Rebecca accessed through his cloud storage accounts. Email threads between Marcus and Bethany showed they had been planning their relationship for months before I discovered them together. They had discussed my work schedule to plan their meetings, analyzed my financial assets to determine how much they could steal, and even joked about my trusting nature, making their schemes so easy to execute. One email from Bethany to Marcus still makes my stomach turn when I remember it. Scarlett thinks we are helping her with wedding planning, but we are really planning our own future together. She has no idea that her savings account is funding our romantic getaways. I almost feel sorry for her, but she has always had everything handed to her, and now it is my turn to take what I deserve. Rebecca also discovered that my parents had been receiving regular payments from Marcus throughout the period following my exile from the family. The payments, disguised as gifts for grandchildren that did not yet exist, were actually hush money to ensure my parents continued supporting Bethany's version of events and discouraging me from pursuing legal action against their crimes. Armed with overwhelming evidence of conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft, I faced a critical decision about how to proceed. I could have contacted law enforcement immediately and watched them all face criminal charges. The evidence was solid enough to guarantee convictions and prison sentences for Marcus and Bethany, with potential accessory charges for my parents. But I realized that immediate legal action would give them too easy an escape from the emotional devastation they had inflicted on me. Prison sentences would make them martyrs in their own minds, victims of a vindictive system, rather than perpetrators who had destroyed family bonds for financial gain. I wanted something far more satisfying than watching them led away in handcuffs. I decided to wait for the perfect moment to expose their crimes in a way that would maximize their humiliation and ensure they faced consequences from every direction simultaneously. I wanted their professional reputations destroyed, their social circles turned against them, and their carefully constructed lies exposed in the most public and devastating way possible. The opportunity presented itself when my grandmother, Eleanor Winters, announced she was battling cancer and wanted one final family gathering before beginning treatment. My parents could not exclude me from this dinner without appearing heartless to my grandmother, who had always been my strongest supporter within the family. I confirmed my attendance at the family dinner and began preparing for the most important performance of my life. For 3 years, I had been building toward this moment when I would walk back into their world, not as the victim they had cast aside, but as the architect of their destruction. The week before the dinner, I made my final preparations. I contacted Rebecca to ensure all evidence was properly organized and legally admissible. I reached out to Patricia Collins and the other victims to coordinate our timing for maximum impact. I arranged for copies of all financial records to be delivered to law enforcement agencies immediately following my family's dinner. Most importantly, I prepared my secret weapon for the evening that would transform their casual family gathering into the beginning of their complete downfall. Everything was perfectly planned, and I could barely contain my anticipation for the moment when their world would begin crumbling around them. The 3 years I spent away from my family were not wasted in self-pity or isolation. Instead, I methodically built a network of allies who would play crucial roles in exposing the truth and ensuring justice was served. Each connection was carefully cultivated, and every relationship served a strategic purpose in my long-term plan for vindication. My first and most important alliance began with Patricia Collins, the nurse whose retirement fund Marcus had stolen years before meeting me. When I initially contacted Patricia, she was hesitant to discuss her experience, explaining that her family had convinced her to move on and avoid the embarrassment of public disclosure. However, our conversation revealed that she had never truly recovered from the financial devastation Marcus had inflicted. Patricia became my closest collaborator in building the case against Marcus. She had maintained meticulous records of their relationship, including emails, bank statements, and even recordings of phone conversations where Marcus made promises about investment returns that never materialized. Her documentation provided crucial evidence of Marcus's pattern of behavior and established his methodology for targeting and manipulating victims. Through Patricia, I connected with 2 additional victims: Sarah Chen, a marketing executive who had lost $40,000 to Marcus's schemes, and Jennifer Walsh, a teacher whose college fund for her daughter had disappeared into one of Marcus's phantom investment accounts. Together, we formed an informal support group that met monthly to share information and coordinate our individual investigations. Our group dynamic evolved into something resembling a strategic planning committee. Patricia's medical background gave her analytical skills that helped us understand the psychological manipulation tactics Marcus employed. Sarah's marketing experience proved invaluable in developing our communication strategy and planning how to control the narrative when we eventually went public with our allegations. Jennifer's teaching background helped us organize our evidence in a clear, compelling way that would be easily understood by law enforcement and potential jurors. While building this victim support network, I also cultivated professional relationships that would prove essential when the time came to expose the truth. My new position at Morrison Strategic Communications, a crisis management firm specializing in corporate scandals, provided me with skills and connections I never could have imagined needing during my previous life as a traditional marketing director. My supervisor at Morrison Strategic, David Chen, became an unexpected mentor and ally. David had built his career managing public relations disasters for high-profile clients, and he recognized my situation as a textbook case of personal reputation management. Without explicitly acknowledging my plans for revenge, David taught me advanced strategies for controlling information flow timing, revelations for maximum impact, and coordinating multiple communication channels to amplify a single message. David also introduced me to Marcus Thompson, an investigative journalist specializing in financial crimes who had covered several high-profile embezzlement cases involving romantic fraud. Marcus Thompson became fascinated by my case when I shared selected details about the patterns of behavior we had documented across multiple victims. He began conducting his own independent investigation while maintaining strict confidentiality about my identity and plans. The most unexpected alliance formed with Detective Angela Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Division of the Metropolitan Police Department. Detective Rodriguez had been investigating a series of romantic fraud cases that matched Marcus Hartwell's methodology. When Rebecca Martinez shared our evidence with Rodriguez through official channels, the detective realized we had uncovered the missing pieces to several cold cases her department had been unable to solve. Detective Rodriguez provided crucial guidance about evidence collection procedures and legal requirements for prosecution. She helped us understand which of our investigative activities could be admissible in court, and which might be challenged by defense attorneys. Most importantly, she coordinated with other law enforcement agencies to ensure our eventual disclosure would trigger comprehensive investigations across multiple jurisdictions. The alliance that proved most personally satisfying came through my grandmother Eleanor, though she never knew the role she was playing in my strategy. During her cancer treatment, I became her primary caregiver and confidant. Our long conversations during chemotherapy sessions revealed that she had harbored serious doubts about Marcus from the beginning of his relationship with me. Eleanor confessed that she had never trusted Marcus's explanations about his work schedule and financial situation. Her concerns had grown when she witnessed his interactions with Bethany during family events, noting the way they communicated through meaningful glances and inside jokes that excluded everyone else. She had considered speaking to me about her suspicions, but worried about interfering in my personal life. Most importantly, Eleanor revealed that she had been documenting family financial transactions for years as part of her estate planning process. Her meticulous records included details about the money my parents had transferred to Bethany after my engagement ended, as well as the subsequent payments they had received from Marcus. Eleanor had recognized these transactions as suspicious, but had not realized their connection to the broader pattern of financial crimes. Eleanor's documentation provided the final piece of evidence needed to prove my parents' complicity in covering up Marcus and Bethany's crimes. Her records showed that my parents had received over $25,000 from Marcus in the 3 years since my exile from the family. The timing of these payments coincided perfectly with moments when I had attempted to maintain contact or seek family support. As my grandmother's health declined, she made an unexpected decision that would prove crucial to my plans. She announced her intention to host one final family dinner before beginning a more aggressive treatment regimen. Eleanor specifically requested that all family members attend, including me, saying she wanted to ensure family unity during her health crisis. My parents could not refuse Eleanor's request without appearing callous and unsupportive during her cancer battle. They reluctantly extended an invitation to me for the first family gathering in 3 years. The invitation came through Eleanor rather than directly from my parents, making their discomfort with the situation obvious to everyone involved. I accepted the invitation immediately and began finalizing preparations for what I privately referred to as the culmination of my 3-year strategic campaign. Every alliance I had built, every piece of evidence I had gathered, and every skill I had developed during my exile would come together during this single evening. The final element of my strategy required careful timing and coordination with my most important ally, someone whose identity would shock my family more than any evidence or accusation I could present. This ally had been working alongside me for over a year, helping to verify financial records and providing insight into Marcus's current activities and vulnerabilities. During the weeks leading up to the family dinner, I coordinated with Detective Rodriguez to ensure law enforcement would be prepared to act immediately following my revelations. Patricia Collins and the other victims confirmed they were ready to provide statements and testimony supporting criminal charges. Marcus Thompson, the investigative journalist, had prepared articles exposing the full scope of the financial fraud conspiracy ready for publication across multiple media outlets. Most importantly, I arranged for complete documentation of all evidence to be delivered simultaneously to law enforcement agencies, regulatory bodies, and professional licensing boards immediately after the family dinner concluded. Marcus's former employer would receive copies of evidence proving his embezzlement activities extended far beyond their internal investigation had uncovered. Bethany's community college would be notified about her participation in identity theft and fraud schemes. The beauty of my coordinated approach was that no single agency or institution could quietly dismiss or minimize the allegations. By simultaneously presenting evidence to multiple authorities, I ensured that Marcus and Bethany would face consequences from every direction, making it impossible for them to control the narrative or manipulate their way out of accountability. As the date of the family dinner approached, I felt a mixture of nervous anticipation and grim satisfaction. 3 years of careful planning were about to reach their climax. My family had no idea that their quiet dinner with Grandma Eleanor was actually going to become the stage for the complete exposure of their lies and the beginning of true justice for all their victims. The most delicious irony was that they had created this opportunity themselves by underestimating my resilience and determination. They had assumed that exile and humiliation would break my spirit permanently. Instead, their betrayal had forged me into something far more dangerous than they could have imagined, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain from their destruction. The family dinner was set for Saturday evening, and I had spent Friday making final preparations when my carefully constructed world began to crumble. The call came from Patricia Collins at 11:30 in the morning, her voice shaking with what I initially assumed was nervous excitement about our approaching victory. "Scarlett, we have a problem," Patricia whispered into the phone. "A big problem. Marcus knows about our investigation." My blood turned to ice as Patricia explained what had happened. Sarah Chen, the marketing executive who had been one of our most trusted allies for over 2 years, had contacted Marcus directly and warned him about our coordinated effort to expose his crimes. Sarah had not only revealed the existence of our victim support network, but had also provided Marcus with detailed information about the evidence we had gathered and our plans for the family dinner. The betrayal was devastating on multiple levels. Sarah knew every aspect of our strategy, including the timing of our revelations, the involvement of Detective Rodriguez, and the prepared media coverage through investigative journalist Marcus Thompson. She had access to copies of all our evidence files and understood exactly how we planned to coordinate the exposure of Marcus's crimes across multiple platforms simultaneously. Patricia's voice cracked as she continued explaining the scope of Sarah's treachery. She told him about the other victims, about Detective Rodriguez, about everything. Marcus called me an hour ago laughing about how naive we were to trust someone so easily. He said Sarah has been reporting to him about our activities for months. The full horror of the situation became clear as Patricia shared details of her conversation with Marcus. He had been using Sarah as a double agent within our group, feeding him information about our investigation, while we believed she was a fellow victim seeking justice. Sarah had never lost $40,000 to Marcus's schemes, as she had claimed. She was his current romantic partner and active collaborator in an ongoing series of financial crimes targeting other women. Marcus had called Patricia not just to gloat about his inside information, but to deliver threats designed to prevent us from proceeding with our planned exposure. He claimed to have evidence that our investigative activities constituted stalking and harassment, which he threatened to use against us in court if we continued pursuing him. More disturbingly, he suggested he had compromising information about each of us that he would make public if we did not abandon our efforts. The psychological impact of Sarah's betrayal was almost more crushing than the strategic setback it represented. For over 2 years, I had trusted Sarah with my most vulnerable moments and my deepest anger about the injustices we had suffered. She had attended our monthly meetings, shared what we believed were her own experiences of victimization, and helped develop the emotional support system that had sustained me through the darkest period of my life. Realizing that Sarah had been manipulating our grief and rage for Marcus's benefit felt like being victimized all over again. Every conversation we had shared, every strategy session, where we planned our approach to seeking justice, every moment when I had opened my heart to someone I believed understood. My pain had been a performance designed to protect the man who had destroyed my life. The immediate practical implications were equally terrifying. Marcus now knew about Detective Rodriguez's involvement, which meant he could take steps to destroy evidence or flee before law enforcement could act. He understood our timeline for the family dinner revelation, giving him the opportunity to prepare counter-strategies or warn Bethany and my parents about what was coming. Most critically, he had advanced knowledge of the media coverage we had planned, allowing him to develop his own narrative to discredit our allegations. Patricia and I spent the afternoon in crisis mode, contacting Detective Rodriguez and Marcus Thompson to warn them about the security breach and assess our remaining options. Detective Rodriguez was professionally calm but clearly concerned about how Sarah's betrayal might compromise the criminal investigation. She explained that Marcus's advance warning could lead to destruction of evidence and coordinated alibis that would make prosecution more difficult. Marcus Thompson, the investigative journalist, faced different challenges due to the security breach. His articles exposing the financial fraud conspiracy were based partly on information provided by Sarah, who had now been revealed as an unreliable source with clear motives to mislead investigators. He would need to verify all information independently before publication, which could delay the media coverage we had planned to coordinate with the family dinner revelations. The most devastating blow came when Detective Rodriguez called me back that evening with additional bad news. Marcus had contacted the police department claiming that he was being stalked and harassed by a group of former romantic partners who were making false allegations to destroy his reputation. He had provided Sarah's sworn statement supporting his claims and suggesting that our victim support network was actually a conspiracy to frame an innocent man. Sarah's statement to police painted me as the ringleader of a vindictive campaign motivated by jealousy and rejection, rather than legitimate grievances about financial crimes. She claimed that I had recruited other women to fabricate stories about Marcus and had pressured them to participate in illegal surveillance activities. According to Sarah's version of events, our evidence had been obtained through stalking harassment and possibly criminal invasion of privacy. The timing of Marcus's preemptive strike was calculated to maximum impact. By filing his complaint with police just 24 hours before the family dinner, he had created legal complications that could prevent Detective Rodriguez from acting on our evidence immediately. The police department would need to investigate his claims about harassment and stalking before they could proceed with our allegations about financial crimes. As I sat alone in my apartment that Friday evening, contemplating the ruins of 3 years of careful planning, I felt the same helpless rage that had consumed me during the original betrayal. Marcus had once again used my trust against me, turning my own allies into weapons for my destruction. The family dinner that was supposed to be my moment of vindication now loomed as a potential disaster where Marcus could expose our investigation and paint me as a delusional stalker seeking revenge. The cruelest irony was that Sarah's betrayal had been so complete and so well-timed that it seemed designed to recreate the exact emotional devastation I had experienced when I discovered Marcus and Bethany together 3 years earlier. Once again, I was alone, betrayed by someone I had trusted completely, facing the prospect of public humiliation, while my enemies celebrated their victory. But as I sat in the darkness of my apartment, surrounded by boxes of evidence that might now be inadmissible and plans that might now be impossible to execute, I realized that Marcus had made one critical mistake in his preemptive strike. He had underestimated my capacity to adapt and my determination to see justice served regardless of the obstacles placed in my path. The family dinner was still 24 hours away, and I was not finished fighting. Saturday morning brought an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end belonged to Jennifer Walsh, the teacher whose daughter's college fund had been stolen by Marcus. Unlike Patricia's panicked call the previous day, Jennifer's tone carried a calm confidence that immediately caught my attention. "Scarlett, I know about Sarah's betrayal, and I know you probably feel defeated right now," Jennifer began. "But I have information that changes everything, and I need you to listen carefully." Jennifer explained that she had never fully trusted Sarah from the beginning of our victim support group. As an experienced educator who had dealt with manipulative students and parents for over 20 years, Jennifer had recognized subtle inconsistencies in Sarah's story that the rest of us had missed. Sarah's descriptions of her financial losses lacked the emotional authenticity that genuine victims displayed when recounting traumatic experiences. More importantly, Jennifer had been conducting her own independent investigation of Marcus's activities without sharing the results with our group. Her suspicions about Sarah had led her to withhold her most damaging evidence from our collective files, a decision that now proved to be strategically brilliant. "I have been working with federal investigators for the past 6 months," Jennifer revealed. Marcus's crimes cross state lines and involve federal wire fraud charges that carry much more serious penalties than the local charges Detective Rodriguez was preparing. The FBI has been building a case against an entire network of romantic fraud schemes, and Marcus is just one piece of a much larger operation. Jennifer's revelation transformed my understanding of the situation completely. The federal investigation had been monitoring Marcus's activities for months, including his relationship with Sarah and his awareness of our victim support group. The FBI had actually encouraged Jennifer to continue participating in our meetings as a way to gather additional evidence about Marcus's methods and identify other potential victims. The federal agents had been aware of Sarah's betrayal long before she contacted Marcus with warnings about our investigation. In fact, they had been monitoring her communications with Marcus as part of their broader investigation into the fraud network. Sarah's decision to warn Marcus about our activities had provided federal investigators with evidence of ongoing conspiracy and obstruction of justice, adding additional charges to their case against both Sarah and Marcus. Jennifer arranged for me to meet with Special Agent Diana Foster from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division that afternoon. The meeting took place in a nondescript office building downtown, and Agent Foster's presentation of their evidence against Marcus was both comprehensive and devastating. The federal investigation had uncovered a sophisticated network of romantic fraud schemes operating across multiple states. Marcus was not working alone, but was part of an organized group that targeted successful professional women through dating apps and professional networking events. The group used detailed profiles and psychological manipulation techniques to identify victims with substantial assets and limited family support systems. Agent Foster showed me surveillance footage of Marcus meeting with other members of the fraud network, including Sarah, to plan targeting strategies and coordinate their schemes. The videos revealed that Marcus and Sarah had been romantic partners for over 3 years, meaning their relationship had begun while he was still engaged to me. Sarah had been present during planning sessions where they discussed my specific vulnerabilities and developed the strategy for gaining access to my financial accounts. The federal evidence included recordings of phone conversations where Marcus and Sarah discussed their infiltration of our victim support group. They had viewed our monthly meetings as intelligence-gathering opportunities, using our shared experiences to refine their psychological manipulation techniques for future victims. Sarah's participation in our group had not been an act of solidarity with fellow victims, but a calculated effort to study our emotional responses and develop more effective strategies for targeting similar women. Most shocking of all, Agent Foster revealed that Marcus and Sarah had been documenting their crimes as training materials for other members of their fraud network. They had created detailed case studies of their successful schemes, including comprehensive profiles of their victims and analysis of the psychological techniques that proved most effective in different situations. My case had become their flagship example of successful long-term manipulation and asset extraction. They had used my story to train new network members in advanced techniques for gaining victim trust, accessing financial accounts, and managing family relationships to prevent detection. The federal investigation had recovered their training materials, which included photographs of my personal documents, recordings of private conversations, and detailed timelines of their manipulation strategies. Agent Foster explained that the federal case against Marcus was so comprehensive that his preemptive strike against our local investigation was essentially meaningless. The FBI had evidence of crimes that extended far beyond anything our victim support group had uncovered, and they had obtained this evidence through legal surveillance methods that could not be challenged in court. The timing of the federal arrests had been planned to coincide with Marcus's appearance at my family dinner, assuming he still planned to attend after learning about our investigation. Agent Foster wanted to know if I was willing to proceed with the dinner as originally planned, knowing that federal agents would be positioned nearby to make arrests immediately after the revelations concluded. The opportunity to expose Marcus's crimes in front of my entire family before watching him led away in federal custody was more satisfying than any revenge scenario I had imagined during my 3 years of planning. Agent Foster assured me that the federal charges were serious enough to guarantee significant prison sentences for both Marcus and Sarah, regardless of any complications arising from their harassment claims against our victim support group. Jennifer's final revelation provided the perfect capstone to the federal case. She had been secretly recording all of our victim support group meetings with FBI approval, capturing Sarah's fake testimonies and her efforts to gather intelligence about our investigative activities. These recordings would provide additional evidence of conspiracy and obstruction of justice, while also documenting the genuine trauma experienced by actual victims of Marcus's schemes. As I prepared for the family dinner that evening, knowing that federal agents would be coordinating the arrests that would finally bring justice for all of Marcus's victims, I felt a sense of vindication that exceeded anything I had hoped for during my darkest moments of exile and betrayal. The dinner that my family expected to be a quiet gathering with Grandma Eleanor would instead become the stage for exposing a federal crime conspiracy and watching the architect of my destruction face consequences that would destroy his life as completely as he had tried to destroy mine. Marcus had been so focused on his preemptive strike against our local investigation that he had walked directly into a federal trap that had been months in the making. His arrogance and overconfidence had blinded him to the possibility that he was facing opponents far more sophisticated and determined than a group of heartbroken victims seeking personal revenge. Tonight, justice would finally be served with the full authority of federal law enforcement behind it. The family dinner began exactly as my parents had planned it 3 years earlier, with polite conversation and carefully avoided topics. My grandmother, Eleanor, sat at the head of the table looking frail, but determined to maintain family traditions despite her ongoing cancer treatment. My parents flanked her sides while Bethany and Marcus occupied the seats they had claimed as their own during my years of exile. I arrived precisely on time, accompanied by my husband of 18 months, FBI Special Agent Diana Foster. The introduction of Diana as my spouse caused visible confusion among my family members, though none of them were prepared for the significance of her presence at our dinner table. As we settled into the meal, I watched Marcus carefully for signs that he was prepared for confrontation about our victim support group's investigation. His behavior suggested supreme confidence in his preemptive strike against our local efforts, and he seemed almost eager to expose me as a vindictive stalker seeking revenge against an innocent man. The conversation remained superficially pleasant through the first course, with my parents making awkward attempts to include me in family updates while avoiding any mention of the 3 years of estrangement that had preceded this gathering. Bethany clung to Marcus's arm possessively, shooting occasional triumphant glances in my direction, as if to remind me that she had won the prize I had lost. My grandmother, Eleanor, however, had her own agenda for the evening. As dinner progressed, she began asking pointed questions about Marcus's work and their financial situation. Her inquiries appeared casual to most of the family, but I recognized them as the result of our conversations during her chemotherapy treatments when she had shared her suspicions about Marcus's truthfulness regarding his professional success. Marcus's answers to Eleanor's questions revealed the same pattern of evasion and misdirection that had characterized his lies to me years earlier. He spoke vaguely about consulting work and investment opportunities, providing no specific details that could be verified or challenged. Bethany supported his explanations enthusiastically, though her comments revealed that she knew as little about his actual activities as the rest of the family. The moment I had waited 3 years for arrived when Eleanor asked directly about the expensive renovations Marcus and Bethany had made to their apartment. Marcus's explanation involved a successful investment that had provided unexpected returns, allowing them to upgrade their living situation and plan for their future together. I exchanged a meaningful glance with Diana, who nodded almost imperceptibly to indicate that federal agents were positioned outside and ready to execute the arrests that would conclude our evening together. The timing felt perfect for revealing the truth about how Marcus had actually financed his lifestyle improvements and romantic gestures. "That's interesting, Marcus," I said calmly, setting down my fork and looking directly across the table at him. "Because according to federal investigators, those renovations were paid for with money stolen from retirement accounts belonging to women you met through dating apps over the past 5 years." The silence that followed my statement was complete and profound. Marcus's face drained of color, while Bethany looked between us in confusion, clearly having no understanding of the criminal activities that had funded her comfortable lifestyle. My parents appeared frozen in their seats, uncertain whether I was making accusations or stating established facts. Diana reached into her purse and withdrew her federal credentials, placing them on the table where everyone could see her official identification. "Marcus Hartwell, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Sarah Chen has already been taken into custody and has provided a full confession regarding your criminal network's activities." The chaos that erupted around the dinner table exceeded even my most optimistic expectations for this moment of vindication. Marcus attempted to stand and flee, but federal agents entered through both the front and back doors of my parents' house, surrounding him before he could take 2 steps away from his chair. Bethany's shock transformed into hysteria as she realized that her romantic fairy tale had been built on a foundation of federal crimes. She screamed at Marcus, demanding explanations while simultaneously begging the federal agents to release him, insisting that there had been some terrible mistake that could easily be resolved. My parents sat in stunned silence as Diana explained that the federal investigation had uncovered evidence of their complicity in covering up Marcus's crimes and accepting payments to ensure family support for his relationship with Bethany. While they would not face criminal charges, their reputations would be destroyed when the media coverage began the following morning. Eleanor, despite her physical frailty, proved to be the strongest person in the room during the arrests. She looked directly at Marcus as the agents handcuffed him and said, "I hope the money was worth destroying so many lives, young man. You chose greed over love, and now you will face the consequences of that choice." As Marcus was led away in federal custody, Bethany turned her fury toward me, screaming accusations about vindictive revenge and claiming that I had orchestrated everything out of jealousy over losing him to her. Her meltdown continued until Diana calmly informed her that she was also under investigation for receiving stolen funds and could face charges as an accessory to Marcus's crimes. The media coverage that began the next morning exceeded anything I could have imagined during my years of planning for this moment. Investigative journalist Marcus Thompson published a comprehensive exposé of the romantic fraud network that had been operating across multiple states, with my case serving as the primary example of their sophisticated manipulation techniques. The subsequent weeks brought a cascade of consequences for everyone who had participated in or enabled Marcus's crimes. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to charges that could have resulted in a much longer sentence if he had insisted on going to trial. Sarah received 8 years for her role in the conspiracy and her betrayal of the victim support network. Bethany avoided criminal charges, but faced complete social and financial destruction when the truth about her lifestyle's funding became public knowledge. She was forced to return stolen funds and assets, leaving her essentially destitute and unemployable due to the media attention surrounding the case, My parents' complicity in covering up the crimes cost them their professional reputations and most of their social relationships. The certified public accounting practice my father had built over 30 years collapsed when clients learned about his involvement in financial fraud cover-ups. But the most meaningful outcome of the entire ordeal was the family I built with Diana and the community of genuine survivors who emerged from the federal investigation. We created a support network that helped dozens of other women recover from romantic fraud schemes and rebuild their lives after similar betrayals. 3 years after that family dinner, Diana and I have created the life together that I once thought I wanted with Marcus, but built on a foundation of honesty, respect, and shared commitment to justice rather than manipulation and theft. So here's my question for all of you who have stayed with me through this incredible journey. Have you ever experienced a moment when karma delivered justice so perfectly that it felt like the universe was finally setting things right? Drop your own justice served stories in the comments below, because I love reading about moments when truth wins over deception. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find it who might need to know they are not alone in facing family betrayals and financial abuse. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and building chosen families that support your growth rather than enabling people who hurt you. Share this video with anyone who needs to remember that patience, planning, and persistence can overcome even the most devastating betrayals when you refuse to let other people's choices define your worth or determine your future. Thank you for joining me on this journey from devastation to vindication. And remember that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well while watching karma handle the people who tried to destroy you. Until next time, keep fighting for the life you deserve.